Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles, coming to you from an altitude of 5,280 feet, where we are hoping you are joining us in September, and where our guest who we are interviewing today will also be in September. I am really grateful to have on our podcast today Dr. Ian Shtulman. He's a second-generation chiropractor and is in Palm Beach, Florida. He's a Life University grad, and I am super proud to say that he got the Philosophy Distinction Award, which means a lot to me. I know means a lot to him. As a diplomat of pediatrics and is a team teacher for the ICPA. So I'm really glad that we'll be talking about chiropractic and pediatrics today. And if that's something that you're excited and energized to learn more about, you're going to enjoy this podcast. You'll also enjoy seeing Dr. Ian on Higher Ground in September. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Doc. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit so people get to know you a little bit more personally. How did you find your way into chiropractic?
Well, I'm a second-generation chiropractor, right? Like you mentioned, my dad graduated from NYCC in 1982. Wow. And he didn't have an overwhelming passion for the philosophy of chiropractic. So it's kind of lucky in that I started getting adjusted in an early age, not necessarily because my dad was super passionate about pediatrics, but he just did what you do when you're a chiropractor, right? You adjust your kids. And I grew up my whole life benefiting from chiropractic. And I was actually in my undergrad at University of Florida planning to become an orthopedic surgeon of all things. And suddenly my dad came back from this conference super fired up, talking about subluxation and the nervous system and all of these things that were kind of foreign terms, for me, even as a second generation chiropractor. I got adjusted my whole life. I never really knew why. And so he came back from, it was total solution. He went out and got a substation and came back finally understanding the inherent value of the adjustment and how it affects the nervous system and our expression of life. And he just was so fired up, ready to tell me all about it. And that was my first time really understanding the value of what I'd been benefiting from my whole life. So I started getting more into it, and I decided that this profession, chiropractic, made far more sense to me as somebody who benefited from my whole life than the path that I was going down in my pre-med. So I changed directions and I went to Life University, and it's, the rest is history.
That's very exciting. I have to say, we have a few common path areas there that I did not know about until I heard you, which is my parents both went to NYCC. And I did not have chiropractic from birth. So my mom went to chiropractic school when I was in high school. And so it was a second career path for her. And but my dad graduated from NYCC in 77 and my mom in 87. So your dad was right in between those two, right in the little bit. And I remember going to Total Solution and being very impactful. So one of the more impactful things I did in my life as a chiropractor. So How did you end up being focused on pediatrics?
Well, I've always loved working with kids. I mean, I was that, weird guy in high school who would babysit, and, I did my volunteer stuff at a daycare center. I always loved working with kids. And when I went to Life, I happened to go to one of their quarterly seminars, and it just so happened that Jeannie Ohm was one of the speakers that weekend. And it was impossible to be in a room with Jeannie Ohm and not be infected by her excitement and passion for perinatal chiropractic. So I walked out of her talk and I said, that's what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I knew that if I had the opportunity to put my hands and make an adjustment to a pregnant or a pediatric patient, that I could forever change their life and the life of everybody they interacted with. And Jeannie just instilled that in me. In one 45-minute talk 15 years ago, I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so I spent the rest of my undergrad, I took all the ICPA series seminars. I, went to all of the, technique seminars. I did everything that I could to immerse myself in that world. And it just so happened that when I graduated chiropractic school and moved to South Florida, there was a local birth center that was opening up at the exact same time, like within the week that I opened up my practice. And even though both the midwife and doula who are operating that center, they've been benefiting from chiropractic themselves for years, they didn't really choose a chiropractor to come and be a part of their team. And I came down, and using that kind of that passion, that excitement, and communicating in a very certain, very particular way for them, they were able to see how chiropractic could fit into midwifery and doula support. And they asked me to come in and basically open up a practice inside the birth center. So I was 25 years old. I graduated chiropractic school. I moved down to South Florida. I got married. I opened up 2 practices in a matter of about 4 months. Which was a little bit of a whirlwind that I don't recommend. But from that point, it was off to the races. I just started seeing more and more pregnant patients, started taking care of more and more young children, started building relationships with other midwives, doulas, OBGYNs, pediatricians, and really try to create that connection between chiropractic and other healthcare professions to make subluxation correction a routine aspect of perinatal care. That's kind of my primary motivation at this point.
Which is very important. And, as you said, all chiropractors get their kids checked or check their own kids. And then you'd think if you check your own kids, chiropractors should be recommending that their practice members' kids get checked.
Absolutely.
Do that, more than they do. What are some important things in communicating about pediatric chiropractic and the need for pediatric chiropractic to your practice members?
It's really interesting because I find that chiropractors can kind of end up in one of 2 areas in terms of communicating chiropractic. They can either be very philosophically straight and only talk about the role of correcting subluxation, while completely ignoring any other aspect of health, or they can be very allopathic in nature, right? You see this a lot where chiropractors talk about, well, if your child has these conditions, you should be coming and seeing us. And I think the problem is that it puts chiropractic into one of 2 camps that don't really apply to most people. Yes, people want their kids to get well if they're struggling with issues, but parents also want their kids to stay well and really be the best version of themselves. Right. And I think what we need to do chiropractically is be able to, 1, meet people where they are, but even if we're talking to them about the challenges that their children are currently facing, always communicating the value of chiropractic and subluxation correction for long-term quality of life. We tend to see that some chiropractors will get into practice and they'll start taking care of kids, or they'll start taking care of pregnant people. And it's very limited to, we'll do a series of care for your child's ear infections, or we'll help turn baby, or we'll do these things that aren't really what chiropractic is doing. And they lose sight of that transition into long-term wellness care. And I think that's a big area where chiropractors make mistakes. And what we need to focus on in communication with our patients is meeting them where they are while showing them the potential of where they can go, and making sure that you can communicate both ends at the same time, so people feel that your practice is not just for them now, but for them forever.
Right, and for the whole family. And that's
absolutely
the thing. I really appreciate that you highlight that, because it's so often and saddens me when I see that chiropractors promote, take kids in for ear infections, and as compared to the whole being. And not that ear infections wouldn't be impacted by a healthier nerve system. We've seen that time and time again, but that aspect of the whole being changing is vital. And that's, I don't even know this, that's how I found my way to a chiropractor. Was someone told me, told my mom to bring me as a child, so turn my health around. And that's actually how she found her way to chiropractic, because nothing else had helped me up till then. So, and we know that chiropractic has those benefits, but if you don't communicate the importance, and that was what happened. I saw lots of different chiropractors, but no one told me why until actually she didn't even know what chiropractic was until she was in her last semester of school, and that's such a travesty. You know?
I mean, listen, my dad practiced 20 something years before he really understood the significance of subluxation and the deleterious effect it has on our quality of life and our expression of health. It took him literally decades of practice before he understood why his patients were having these, miraculous type of results. And for him to be able to understand enough to communicate to me, his own son, who finally got it and decided, yes, this is what I want to do also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I got to tell you, or I want to ask you, I know we share something else that's important in addition to chiropractic and the importance of pediatrics chiropractic. We also really both share the value and appreciation and also frustration when this doesn't happen of outcome assessments, and that chiropractors are using outcome assessments. Can you say anything about the outcome assessments relative to pediatric care?
Yeah, you have to have some level of objective assessment in order for you to know, one, if somebody is subluxated, two, if your intervention, your adjustment has addressed that subluxation, three, if that patient is holding or seeing progress. You have to be able to objectively assess that patient, whether they're a newborn or whether they are an athlete or elderly, it really doesn't matter. Every single person that you intend to deliver an adjustment deserves the confidence, the certainty, the objective confirmation that what you're doing is necessary and valuable in that moment. Right. And so with kids, there's lots of different assessments. And really one of the big challenges with kids is because every child is a little bit different. Some kids are a little bit more relaxed. Some kids are a little bit more resistant. So you need to work with kids to figure out not just an overall assessment that will be able to track them throughout care, but even what can you do every visit to objectively identify the presence of a subluxation and or the correction of a subluxation after the adjustment. And so I love using a variety of tools. When I work with kids, I'll do leg length assessment, I'll do motion palpation, I'll even do challenges, similar like activator type of challenges. But I'll also quantify things with paraspinal thermography, with Atlas fossa readings, with heart rate variability. I want to see that I'm removing myself from the equation and actually seeing objective changes in this child as they're progressing through care. I think it's absolutely essential.
Right. And so often, I was just teaching out in California near Life West, and it was amazing to see the students and doctors have their head turn around in terms of that perspective that did not value that before. And it's so vital for people to have something that they can see and connect to that's going on within their body, and then relate it not to pain per se, but to the integrity of the spine and nerve system. So I'm really glad that you champion that.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that some chiropractors fall into is they start to play around with it, whether it's pre and post x-rays or whether it's neurospinal scans. And when they don't see the objective changes that they're hoping for, the assumption is, oh, well, this doesn't really work, right? Instead of asking themselves, how can I get better at quantifying, correcting, analyzing the subluxation so that objectively it does change? Right. Too often we're looking for some sort of tool to confirm our own bias as instead of trying to improve our skills to be able to objectively see that improvement in our assessment and our outcomes.
Right. And also, let me ask you this. Have you found, from going to that person that opened 2 offices in 4 months, did you find that from that person you were then till now, having those outcome assessments, especially with children, that it somehow made you a better chiropractor, like it helped you get your hands to be better?
100%. You know, not only did it help my hands be better, I mean, it helped me as a chiropractor be more confident. You know, I could look at a family and show them their scans, show them the x-rays, and explain to them confidently what's going on. I didn't have to rely on, well, this is what I felt, or this is what's, you know, what I think's going on. I can show them. And it is rare that I have a patient who is not blown away, impressed at the level of evaluation and assessment that we go through with our new patient assessment. People are usually just so wowed by the technology that's available within chiropractic.
Right.
And what we notice is that there are times where I've had patients who I would have assumed, based on their symptom profile, right, based on their secondary conditions when they came in, I would assume that their scans would light up like a Christmas tree, and they actually had very little activity. And so what I noticed is that those patients improved in their quality of life and their overall health closer in accordance with their scans than their actual symptom profile. Because there were other people who came in with very mild symptoms who you could look at and say, oh, well, this person should respond really quickly, but their scans looked terrible. And it took a lot longer to peel away those decades worth of compensation patterns and scans and all sorts of gunk that's been stored up in their nervous system for them to actually be able to access that healing and be able to recover. So the scans, the outcome assessments give me not only the confidence that I'm making positive changes, but it also gives me the confidence to look at somebody and say, this is going to take longer than you expected. There is a lot here. There's a lot of tension stored up in your child's nervous system. It's going to take a series of visits for us to peel that away and gradually open up that healing potential within them. But we're going to track over time so you can objectively see that we're doing what we say we're doing.
You know, I know you hear this as I do. How often do you hear I've never had a chiropractor do such a thorough exam?
Yeah, it's, you know, and what I think is really interesting about it is, I was having this conversation with my dad this weekend, and I said, chiropractic is one of the most simple things that you can do in terms of, if you want to classify it as like healthcare. It's so easy. It's locate the subluxation, analyze it, correct it, leave it alone, right? And what I find is that even the simple, the assessment part, right? Just analyzing it, finding out where it is, quantifying the amount of activity is in some ways the most mind-blowing thing for the patient. They are just kind of surprised that we have the capacity to actually document the presence and the effects of that subluxation. And to me, it's just so like, well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to objectively document the subluxation and then correct it and objectively document how their body changed afterwards? It just seems like such a natural thing for us to do. And it doesn't make practice more complicated. It actually allows us to simplify practice. It allows us to really hone in on the adjustment and correcting subluxations and allowing people to tap into that innate healing potential. And so you don't have to rely on gimmicks or other things in practice, because you can show somebody on their scans, look, you're making progress and there's still more room to go. So let's keep at it. Let's keep correcting those subluxations. Let's get you to a point where you're holding your adjustments long enough for this tension in your nervous system to dissipate. And doing that will finally allow your body to heal as well as it should. So I think the objective, the objective assessments actually simplify practice. It doesn't make it more complicated.
Right. Yeah. And, I'll tell you, not many people will admit this, but I have no problem admitting it. The times that I really value an objective outcome assessment, especially with kids, is when they're not changing. And that when I'm like, what? Then I have to say, well, what am I not seeing? Because that's possible for sure. And that's when you really have the opportunity to grow as a practitioner.
Yeah. And sometimes, it's tough to be able to look at a child that should be responding in a certain way, and you see that objectively that's not happening, to take a step back and look inward and reassess, like, well, what am I missing as a provider? Do I need to switch up techniques? Have I been adjusting C1 where I really need to do occiput as a lever instead? Have I been focusing on ilium and I should be looking at sacrum?
Right.
The objective assessments allow you to revisit your analysis.
Yep.
And simply look at your results and say, well, what's working, what's not working, what do I get to shift in order to make this more effective for my patient, for this person in front of me?
Well, and that's the thing, is ultimately the person on the table who's why you're there. So,
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
now, what for someone? What are some things that you advise or would help people be a better pediatric chiropractor? Or can you share any keys to taking care of little ones that people may be new to them?
So, I would say the first thing is keep it simple. It is so easy to fall down into this rabbit hole of trying to be all things for every child in your office. I personally don't love spending time doing like therapies or doing exercises. So instead, I'd prefer to refer them to an occupational therapist and coordinate care together. I don't like doing stretches and physical therapies, so I've developed relationships with physical therapists who will refer patients to me, and I can refer patients to them, and we can take care of people with both of us sticking to what we do best.
Right.
If you did nothing else besides locate, analyze, and correct subluxations, right? If you just did that, you will transform the lives of countless children in your life. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. And if you've got that highly analytical brain and you really want to dive deeper and deeper to help kids on an even deeper level, there are programs out there that can support you in doing that. But that doesn't have to be who you are as a provider if that's not who you are as a person, if that's not what you love to do. I found when I was going through the ICPA seminar, I did the whole series when I was in school, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to teach for them now, that the ICPA series was this magnificent overview of the entire spectrum of chiropractic perinatal practice. And I was able to see all different techniques, and I was able to see people who go way more in depth into primitive reflexes and exercises. And I saw people who got really in depth into cranial work and kind of SOT stuff. And I was able to see all of that, and it allowed me to narrow it down into who I was as a provider. And instead of trying to be everybody else, I just discovered who it was that was authentic for me. And there are chiropractors who have come and shadowed me. And honestly, what they do is on a whole nother level, right? They're just not, they're doing much more in-depth work on fewer children, which isn't bad. It's wonderful for those kids who need it. But if you just focus on who you are as a provider and try to keep your practice simple to how you can best serve people, and then build teams around you, whether it's other chiropractors or occupational therapists, pediatricians, pediatric physical therapists, all of them, that can all serve people in their own capacity. I think it's going to allow you to have more fun in practice. I love being in practice. I have so much fun playing with kids and getting them adjusted and taking care of families. I don't know if I could have that same level of joy if I was doing intense therapy, occupational type of therapy stuff with kids with major sensory processing stuff. That's just not what I love to do as a provider, but I have people in my community, chiropractors, that I can refer to do that. So if you want to serve families, don't feel like if you don't know everything, you can't. Get in there, start doing it, and expand your horizon and discover more areas of the perinatal specialty, because you'll find something that is either the right fit for you, and you may discover things that aren't the right fit for you and seek those people out in your community that you can refer to and build great relationships. Right.
So true. So vital. And it's so interesting that people so fall off all of this. And it's trying to shift that. When you take care of people, children, is there anything in particular that helps you communicate the importance of a child getting care?
So, well, I guess that part of that depends on if you're talking about whether it's with a parent or with a provider, right? So I always try to communicate with both. I want their parents to understand how chiropractic is going to serve this child both now and long term. And I also want the provider to understand the clinical significance that subluxation and how it manifests in their office with other patients. So I think that's important, is to make sure that you're communicating with both. Because the last thing you want is one of your patients to go to their pediatrician and the pediatrician kind of dismiss chiropractic without really understanding it. So I think it's important and valuable to communicate with both. One of the things that I love to do when I'm talking with parents is I want them to really connect emotionally with what their child and their family are going through as a unit. You know, you have kids. I've got a 4 and a 6-year-old. It's impossible to have a child going through something, especially a health challenge, without it affecting everybody in the family.
Right.
Even if it's just the emotional health and comfort of the parents, nobody wants to see their child struggling, and a child struggling can dramatically influence the dynamics of that household. So I want the parents to connect emotionally with how this is impacting that child's quality of life and their future. So I always ask them, well, what is how is your child's health getting in the way of family life at home? How is this affecting you as a family? Mm-hmm. And I want to communicate the role chiropractic plays in supporting them in accomplishing what they want for their child. And this is important because if you told me that a child had asthma, right? And I was talking to you about your child's asthma, and I was doing all the OPQRST, and I was doing the activities of daily life, and I was doing all of that. And then I started talking about how chiropractic could help with asthma. There's value in that, right? But it doesn't have the same value if I get you to connect with the fact that your child's asthma is preventing them from playing soccer that they love so dearly, and how it breaks your heart seeing them having to stop in the middle of a game to go visit their inhaler. And then I, as a provider, can talk about chiropractic and the role chiropractic will play, not in this child's asthma, but in this child's ability to regain the quality of life that they so desperately seek, the one that the parents are emotionally invested in.
Right.
So for me, it's all about getting those parents to understand and recognize the impact that their child's quality of life is having on themselves as parents. Because if you can tap into that, if you can communicate the value chiropractic plays for addressing that, then it's going to create a much deeper connection and a much deeper motivation for that person to continue into your office.
Right. And help them also continue to receive care down the road, of course.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to create that emotional connection. And then also during the initial consultation, I'm always emphasizing how the stresses, the physical, chemical, and emotional stresses that led to those subluxations in the first place, those stresses aren't going away. They're going to continue bombarding this child throughout every stage of their development and for life, forever after. And what we want to do chiropractically is not just address the subluxation and all of the patterns of compensation that have been built up to this moment, but then we want to keep your child well adjusted. So as they go through life, dealing with these stresses, their nervous system can perceive and adapt to that changing environment as efficiently and effectively as it needs to for that child to become the best version of themselves possible.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any particular, you may or may not, any particular significant story of a child in care that you remember that was moving for you?
Yeah, I have a couple. One of them I'm actually planning on saving for Mile High, so okay. I'm gonna save that story. But there was this little girl, her name is Madison, and her mom came to me. Madison was probably 2.5 months old. And they've been to pediatricians, they've been to specialists, neurologists, pediatric gastroenterologists. Madison had the severe reflux that was making it to a point where she'd been diagnosed and even hospitalized with failure to thrive. She had, she was 2.5 months old. She was still probably about 8 pounds. She wasn't really making eye contact. She wasn't responding or interacting with her older siblings. She wasn't, eating very much. Whatever she did eat, she would spit back up. She was on 3 medications. None of it worked. I mean, it was just, a child that was really struggling to live in this world of ours. And the mom came in and she said, I don't know if there's anything that you can do, but I've run out of options. And a friend told me that you might be able to help. And at the time, I'd never taken care of a child with failure to thrive. I didn't understand all the nuance of everything that this little girl had been through. But when her mom asked me, can you help? I distinctly remember saying to her, if your child is subluxated, then correcting that subluxation will allow them to express their life potential more fully, something along the lines of that, right? It was basically like, I don't know, but if there's a subluxation to correct, their body will be better for it. And so I delivered that first adjustment. And I told the mom, I said, I think you'll see something change in your child. Come back in a couple days. And when she came back, she told me that after that first adjustment, she was able to feed for the first time without any sort of reflux.
Wow.
And then after the second adjustment, she started interacting with her siblings. And after the third adjustment, she started having regular bowel movements. And it was one of those things where, like, each visit when they came in, it was like, all right, cool. What are we going to see now? And about 3 weeks later, they were able to cancel the specialist visit because they were going to do the feeding tube. And they were able to cancel it. And this little girl now she's probably about 6 years old. And she is just, the embodiment of thriving. And I always think back to what would have happened if this friend of hers didn't mention that chiropractic was a possibility. And if I didn't have the confidence in chiropractic, the philosophical foundation in chiropractic, to be able to tell this mom, yes, chiropractic can help if your child is not expressing their life, potential fully, right?
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important philosophically that we understand what chiropractic is and what it isn't. Because it could have been very easy for me to say, no, chiropractic doesn't treat failure to thrive. And this child would have been, left without options. But having the philosophical foundation to know what's possible and to be able to communicate that to this nervous mom and have her hand over this, by all intents and purposes, newborn, right? That this tiny little baby, and say, okay, adjust them. I think that's what we need more of for young doctors, for students, because if you don't have that philosophical foundation of what chiropractic is, what it isn't, it completely limits your vision for possibilities within this profession. One quick story, I had a student who reached out, one of the schools that is a little bit less philosophically inclined. And she said to me, I'd really love to come shadow. I'm so interested in everything that you do with pregnant women and how you help their backs feel better. And I just thought that last part, that how you help their backs feel better, is the embodiment of the limitation allopathic schools place on future chiropractors.
Right.
It puts people in this musculoskeletal mindset where they don't see possibility. They don't see potential. They're literally subluxated in their thinking about chiropractic.
Right.
And I think it's so important. I know you love going to schools. I love going to schools. It's so important for chiropractors who get it to reach out to local schools or even travel to schools and connect with students and inspire them. Because as much as we'd love to say it's the responsibility of the schools to do that, the school's responsibility is to, get their students ready to pass boards and graduate, right? I think it's up to us as stewards of this profession, as guarding the sacred trust, to going out and connecting with students at an early age where we can plant these seeds so that they can grow into the chiropractors that we so desperately need. And that's the thing that I think is so important is if that's who you are as a provider, as a chiropractor, it's time to start, whether it's bringing them in as an intern or as an associate, or even going to schools and just talking to students about chiropractic and practice. We so desperately need it, particularly at the schools where they don't really welcome that on campus.
Right. Well, and even at the schools that they do welcome it at campus, because I see it both ways. I was just teaching a program. I had some people at some schools that teach very little chiropractic and are alleged chiropractic schools that were blown away by what we're saying, and some that were at very well-known schools that are known as chiropractic schools that also did not get the information that we were sharing in school. So, and it's really the future of chiropractic is, in my mind, in two things. One, children getting chiropractic care, and two, the students. So that's the future lies in our ability to connect to those two populations: children getting care, and the kids that are in chiropractic school, right?
Yeah.
Though we know some of them aren't kids, which is also an incredible thing, So I got to tell you, I really appreciate you sharing today. I know people are going to love everything that we discussed here today, which means they're going to actually really love seeing you at Mile High. Is there anything you want to share about what you're going to be sharing when you're in Colorado?
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about not just pediatric, but prenatal care as well. I think it's so important. If you want to see more kids, start serving more pregnant patients. Mm-hmm. It's really that simple. And there are certain things that we can do in our understanding of perinatal chiropractic, in the philosophical context of practice, in how we understand the subluxation, how we communicate it both to patients and providers, that will transform your ability to serve more families, right? For us to be able to have the true impact that we want, to serve the little girls like Madison that so desperately need what we have to offer. And that's honestly, listen, I don't have anything to sell, right? I don't have like a program. I don't have anything that I'm coming out to Mile High because I'm hoping that in my 25 minutes, I can spark just enough of a fire inside maybe one person in that audience to go out and serve one more family than they would have otherwise. Mm-hmm. And I want everybody to leave Mile High, not just ecstatic about chiropractic, but really fired up to serve families, to take care of pregnant patients, to see more kids, and to really fulfill the potential of chiropractic that we just talked about.
Well, and I'll tell you, I am very cautious and I put a lot of intention around who we invite to speak.
You definitely do.
People that will represent chiropractic appropriately, and will in terms of what they bring back to their community, what they bring back, because a lot of students come as well, and I'm really glad to hear your message. Because again, the future of chiropractic. So we're excited to see you out in Colorado. It's going to be pretty soon. It's just around the corner. And I know people are going to be really get a lot out of what you're sharing. Is there any last thing that you can share about how people can connect with you?
If you want to connect with me, I'm sure you'll include a link to, my Facebook page and website and all of that stuff. Honestly, my lasting message is really, kind of simple. If you believe that chiropractors should have access to taking care of children, and you want to support the the training of chiropractors, the education to the public, the research of pediatric and prenatal care. If you're not already a member of the ICPA, join.
For sure, absolutely.
You know, to me, fulfilling the legacies of Larry Webster and Jeannie Ohm and seeing chiropractors come together under a shared umbrella of wanting to serve more families, I think is just absolutely key. So, you know, come visit my, you know, my class for the ICPA, but, you know, feel free to shoot me a message directly through any of the social media contacts that Daniel put in there.
Great, great. Well, again, we are extremely thrilled to have you out in Colorado. I know it's one of your places to visit, one of your favorite places to visit. It's a lot of people's favorite places to visit. So you couldn't be in better surroundings and also be with better people to help up your game. So thank you. And we look forward to seeing everybody at Mile High. Again, you can reserve your seats at riseuptomilehigh.com. All the details are there. And remember, bring your team, grab some extra student tickets so you can gift them to students. And certainly check out the ICPA's programs. We've been members for a very long time, and you know, it's a vital part of molding a new future for chiropractic. So thank you for all that you do for chiropractic, Ian. I'm truly grateful.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate it.
And we will see everybody on Higher Ground in September. Keep changing spines and lives and minds with chiropractic.